Hi everyone, it's Fiona here. I'm just waiting to ensure that this is working before I get started. Yes, looks like we're live. Okay, hi. So I'm Fiona from Informed Health. I'm a nutritionist and holistic counsellor and life coach, and I'm actually studying at the moment to be a mind-body coach because I'm doing a lot of this work. This is the sort of stuff that Rebecca and I see at Informed Health all of the time. And Informed Health, just so that you know who we are, we're actually online nutritionists. Like I said, I'm a counsellor as well. So we help people with nutrition, but we also help people with what gets in the way, which is what I'm going to be talking to you about today, because I'm going to be talking about emotional eating and stress eating. And you're welcome to pop questions below. I will look for them. Beck's in the other room, so she might come in and interrupt if there's a question or something that I miss, if I'm missing something here. But otherwise, I'm just going to keep going with this talk, and we'll see how we go. And also, I'm going to be looking at I've got some notes on the other screen to do that, so I'll be looking at that a bit, then I'll come back every so often and check these notes. It's actually Natural Medicine Week, and so every year I do something to celebrate Natural Medicine Week. So this is our contribution this year, is this free talk about emotional and stress eating. We are completely online, available online, so if you do need help, we can help you. So anyway, I'm going to start talking about emotional and stress eating and why it can't be fixed with a diet, because many of us have been on many diets, and quite often, more often than not, the outcome of diets is you put the weight back on plus more. So you might lose the weight initially, but ultimately you end up back where you were before, or maybe even in a worse situation. And often there's an emotional eating component to that, and I'll go into that in more detail as we go along. But because there is an emotional eating component to it, we need to actually address that. Like, you can, eat a healthy diet till the cows come home, but if you're using emotional eating as your way of managing your stress, then it doesn't matter what diet you do, that diet is not going to fix the problem. So if the problem is about emotions, diet will go so far in that, because certainly foods will contribute to mood and that kind of thing. However, it's not going to fix the whole problem if it's about dealing with your emotions. So it is important to learn ways to manage your emotions that aren't about food. Anyway, I'll talk about that as we go. So I'm just going to pop over to my other screen. So I'm not going to see your questions for a little while, but I will pop back in case anyone's asking any questions. Also, please, it helps us if we know if people watch this live or if they watch it later. So if you're watching it live, can you give us a hashtag live? And down below, just as hashtag live. And if you're watching it on replay, just do hashtag replay later on, so I can kind of get an idea of how many people watch it later and live, and when people are watching it, it's just good for us to know. So in regards to emotional and stress eating, so first of all, first question is it a problem? Well, if you're watching this, chances are it probably is, but it's not necessarily a problem. We are human beings, and as human beings, we are, especially, I don't know, I can only speak for the Western world, but especially in the Western world, we do use food as part of celebration, and it's love, and it's celebration, and it's birthday cakes, and it's, all those things. And so we do use food a lot in regards to emotions. And so it's not unusual, and often it's, we're actually given food to deal with emotions, and I'll go through that a little bit in a minute as well. But essentially, we all are prone to emotional eating sometimes, and if we do that sometimes, but it is not affecting our health or our life, then it's not really a problem, is it? So emotional eating in of itself isn't this terrible bad thing that must be stamped out. However, if it's starting to become a problem for you, if it's starting to cause health problems or problems in your life, then then maybe it is a problem for you. So it's not a problem just because you emotionally eat, but if it's causing problems for you, then it probably is. So the question is it a problem for you? So what I was hinting at before is, with emotional eating, often it's taught to us by our parents, and I'm not having a go at parents here. We're all human beings, and the truth is that all parents are going to get something's right, something's wrong, whatever. It's just the way it is. And one of the things that adults often do is adults themselves have not been taught how to deal with strong emotions, difficult emotions. And because as adults, we haven't been taught that skill and we're not very good at that in many cases, what happens is we actually don't know how to teach that to our children or the children around us, and we don't know how to be around strong emotions. And if you've spent any time with a child, especially a very small child or an infant, you will know that they're very in touch with their emotions, absolutely in touch with their emotions. If something goes wrong for them and it's they scream blue murder, it's the worst thing. They're very, very immediately in touch with their emotions, and they have very strong emotions. And because they can't communicate and say, hey, that hurts, or I don't like that, or whatever it is, they scream and yell and whatever they do, right? So children are very in touch with their emotions. And as adults, when we're around a child who is displaying a really strong emotion, it makes us very uncomfortable for a few reasons. Obviously, it can be noisy and stressful and distracting and all of those things. But also, we're often just very uncomfortable with the strong emotion, especially if they're upset, like if they've fallen over and they've hurting themselves. Great English. If they've hurt themselves, if they've hurt their knee or something like that, they're going to be, maybe really upset and crying. And we just can't deal with that level of emotion, many of us anyway, well, probably most of us. And so our solution to that is here, eat a lolly, have a chocolate, I'll get you an ice cream. But quite often it's actually a food solution. And it's not broccoli. It's not you've hurt yourself here, have some broccoli, right? It's you hurt yourself here, have some chocolate. So very early on, not because anyone's bad or wrong, just because of society and what we do with what seems normal in our society, but very early on, we often teach children that having strong emotions is not really a good thing to do because it makes everyone really uncomfortable. We're all really uncomfortable. We don't like feeling uncomfortable. And the solution to strong emotions is chocolate, sugar, whatever. It's certainly not broccoli, right? So we're taught from a very young age that sugar, ultimately, sugar, carbs, that kind of thing, is the solution to the emotion. And it does actually have that kind of, you get that dopamine, that woohoo effect that kind of makes you feel good. And it sort of just fills the void, right? It fills that hole. So if you're feeling a strong emotion, often it can calm it somewhat. So it feels like, the perfect solution. And so we're taught that, it's not okay to have strong emotions, that strong emotions might actually be a bad thing. And we're taught that the solution to the strong emotions is the sugar. So you see how that can be challenging. And so it is important to understand that often, we're taught these things. Oh, hello, I'm just popping over to see who's on. And hi, Christine. Hi, Beck. And there's two Christines. And Christine from ATMS. Hi, Christine. They're the ones who are running the Natural Medicine Week this week. So, and Ross from Chatswood. Oh, so we've got Canberra, we've got Chatswood, we've got sort of all over Sydney at the moment. Oh, great. So we'll see if we spread further about as we go. Actually, when you do the hashtag live or the hashtag replay, tell us where you are, because that'll be really interesting if you want to. But that's okay if you don't. But it'll be interesting to see where people are, because it's page rich as a lot of people. So anyway, we're taught to, with our feelings, we're actually taught to kind of not have strong feelings, and a great solution to strong feelings, is the sugar. So, we've been taught that from such a young age that are you surprised that that's what you go for, The other thing too is that it's a legal solution, because, whereas, taking illicit drugs or, or gambling or the other kind of things that we might do, some of those things are kind of illegal, or they're things that you are less socially acceptable or whatever. But food is part of the social part of our everyday life. So food is an easy way to manage those issues without having to go off and do other things. So it's kind of a socially acceptable way, I suppose, of doing things. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out in our, whenever we do start these new, you go on a diet or start a new healthy regime, whatever it is, what happens is don't realize there's a part of our brain called the reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain's actually there to protect us. So a typical situation would be you go on some sort of diet, some sort of health program, and you get, it might be a week, it might be 2 or 3 weeks into it, and then suddenly you start sort of, trying to talk yourself out of it. Suddenly you're sort of saying, oh, I'm tired tonight, maybe I'll just go to the Macca's drive-through, or oh, maybe it's too cold, I don't want to get up and exercise this morning, or whatever it is, but you start trying to talk yourself out of it. And often when that happens is we feel a lot of shame about that. We feel a certain level of failure. We feel like, well, there's something wrong with me. Everyone else can do it, but I can't do it. I don't have self-control or discipline or willpower or all of those things that apparently you're missing, and therefore you're the person who's not going to go to do your exercise, or you're the person who is going to sort of I'll talk about this more in detail later, but sort of fall off the wagon or go off track. And when this happens, we feel a lot of shame. And instead of knowing that it's actually really normal, it's our reptilian brain, and the reptilian brain does not like change. Change is bad, right? Now, it doesn't matter what the change is, reptilian brain just does not like it. Change is threatening. So even if the change is improving your health, the reptilian brain doesn't know that. It's not interested in that. The reptilian brain just wants things to stay the same, because if things stay the same, we're safe. So basically, for the reptilian brain, change is a threat. And any threat that comes along, we have to stamp that out, right? So essentially, if you make changes, especially if they're big changes, especially if you're really going really full on making these big changes, the reptilian brain can get really freaked out and think that it's unsafe and try and just get you back to doing what you were doing before, which was safe, right? When you know that the reptilian brain does that and why it's doing that, it's doing it to protect you, then you can be prepared for that. So for starters, you can actually tell your reptilian brain, hey, reptilian brain, knew you were going to come along. Yes. Hi. And guess what? We're safe. We're fine. So you don't need to freak out. And yeah, guess what? We're going for exercise now. Or, we're not going to Macca's because I've got some good food at home, right? So reptilian brain, you can be prepared and you can talk to your reptilian brain. You can also talk to your nutritionist or your coach or your trainer or, your best friend or whoever it is, plan who your person's going to be, who you talk to when when you feel like, oh, I've gone off track and I'm starting to fail or something. Just plan to talk to somebody. But more often than not, what people do is they just go off into their little shame corner because they think that, oh, okay, I'm a failure. And it's what I expected because I failed over and over before. So this is what I know. This is what I know to be true. And so I failed. I'm no good. I don't have self-control, all of that. And, rather than reach out and ask for help, we just give up, right? Because I'm a failure. And, do you recognize that? Does anyone here recognize that? You may or may not want to say, you're welcome to share with us if you do, and if you want to share, and you don't have to if you don't feel comfortable to. But I know I recognize it. I've done it before. So what happens is we feel like we've somehow failed. And if your way of dealing with strong emotions is with food, and then every time you do a diet, you've set yourself up for failure. And as soon as your reptilian brain kicks in, you feel like you've failed. And so what are you going to do when you feel like you've failed? You're going to emotionally eat, aren't you, right? So can you see? And then you're going to feel ashamed that you emotionally ate. So it sort of just feeds into itself. So it's this kind of never-ending thing that kind of just feeds into itself. And oh, you're not checking up on me, Christine. That's good to hear. And hello, oh yeah, this is Christine. It feeds into itself. So it just becomes self-fulfilling, right? Your reptilian brain kicks in, you stop doing the diet or the new healthy changes, and you decide that you failed, and because you failed, you might as well just quit. And you'll start again next year, next month, Monday, whatever. And when you do this over and over again, it feeds into your proof that you're a failure, doesn't it? Because if you fail over and over again, or if you perceive that you failed over and over again, that sort of keeps feeding into itself, right? So it's just this never-ending cycle that just feeds into itself. Now, I want to just quickly change track a little bit and talk to you about what's good about emotional eating, because people don't think there's anything good about it. And the truth is that when something emotionally is happening, or you're doing a behavior like emotional eating, or it could be, when you get a symptom in your body, Usually your body, you're telling yourself somewhere within you, your intuition, whatever, but you're getting the message that something's out of whack, that something's not right, that something's not in balance. So emotional eating is actually, it has a message for you. And it's really important to look at, well, what is that message? So rather than going, oh, if I fail, there's something wrong with me, I'm terrible, look for what that message is. And one of those messages is that constant dieting and food restriction doesn't work. If you're just constantly, dieting and then failing and then failing and then dieting and whatever, it doesn't work. It actually, depending on how you do it, but largely it will make you nutritionally deplete and you're imbalance. So you just lack of nutrition. So you're losing nutrition often every time you do these diets, especially some of the kinds of diets that some people do. What also happens is when you go into diets, depending on how you do it, but quite often your body goes into survival mode and it actually thinks it's starving, because unfortunately our body isn't different to our ancestors, and our ancestors didn't have food everywhere, but we do. I've got a 24-hour service station across the road from my house. Luckily, it's, I'd have to mortgage the house to go over there and buy things, so generally I don't. But that we didn't have that once upon a time, so our body didn't have to deal with that. So when there isn't much food around, our body can and often does go into a mode where it thinks that there's not going to be enough food, and so your metabolism slows down and you hold on to fat and you hold on to calories because your body literally does think that there's deprivation, there's starvation, there's not going to be enough food, because once upon a time that was true. But for most of us in the Western world, unfortunately, it's the complete opposite, that we're actually abundant food around us. And not only that, but quite often we don't realise this, but a lot of people, even people who are carrying a lot of weight, are actually very nutritionally depleted, very lacking in nutrition. And if your body is lacking in actual nutrition, like the nutrients it needs to function, it can actually think that there's not nutrition. So you can eat a whole bunch of garbage and you'd think that your body would say, okay, I'm full. But sometimes it actually doesn't, because it didn't recognize any of its food and it's still actually looking for food because it needs nutrition. So unfortunately, we do have an abundance for many of us. There's an abundance of food around, and an abundance of food-like products that aren't really food. And so, again, when we're doing this sort of constant dieting and when we're not getting the right nutrition, our body is right out of balance. And so emotional eating might be a clue for you that, whatever you're doing, the constant dieting or the way you're eating is out of balance and it's not working for you. And also, again, it feeds into that you've got lack of morals or lack of control, and the control is the lack of control is because you're not eating well and because of the stories that you're telling yourself as well. But I'll talk to you about that more as we go. But if you listen to your emotional eating, it has a message for you. It's not a willpower problem. You don't have a willpower problem. It's a natural biological mechanism. So you're probably actually, there's a message in it, right? Your body's got a message for you. But if you think you have a willpower issue, it sets you up for the shame emotional eating roundabout, and you go over and over and over again. So rather than seeing emotional eating as some sort of failing or some sort of proof that you don't have willpower or something wrong with you, see it as a message and start to kind of look, listen to your body, look at what's going on in your life, look at where things are out of balance. You're probably getting a message that things are out of balance, and pay attention to that. Excuse me, I just have some tea. I'll just check to see if there's any questions. No. Essentially, one of the messages if you're emotional eating, what one of the messages actually is? Fighting food never works. Food isn't your enemy to battle with. Eating and appetite are essential for survival. So fighting food is insanity. And at the moment, I'm delving into some of the stuff I'm learning because I'm actually studying at the Psychology of Eating Institute at the moment with Mark David. So a little bit of what I'm talking about at the moment, I've taken directly from Mark David. So I just want to give him credit there as well because he's brilliant. And this is some of the stuff I'm learning there. And I just wanted to, while I'm talking about this, I wanted to talk a little bit about, food addiction versus habituation. So previously I have referred to, sugar addictions or food addictions because it feels like that, right? Um, I now prefer not to use the word addiction, and I'll explain to you why. Not because it doesn't feel like it. I know it does feel like it. The problem is, and this is something I've learned through Mark David at the Institute of Psychology of Eating as well, so I'll give him credit for this, or just the languaging around this. But when I heard him explain this, I thought, no, it makes a lot of sense. So I wanted to explain it to you as well. So I'm just like checking on some notes about this because I just want to make sure I say it right. Essentially, it's best to use habituation rather than addiction. Yeah, it does become a habit. Yes, it does. The reason why is because you can't be addicted to something that is essential to life, right? So the things that are essential to life are things like air, food, sleep, breathing, going to the toilet, right? They're all just things that are essential as part of your life. The issue with calling them an addiction is if you call them an addiction, it actually just continues a destructive belief in your mind, because the problem with addiction is that you need food. You need food for survival, right? You can't, and if you look at any model for addiction, so whether you're looking at, like generally it's the 12 steps, right? And so whether it's, alcohol or drugs or other things, when you look at the addiction model of how to treat addiction, you treat addiction with abstinence, right? So you don't have the alcohol or the drug. That's not an option with food, right? You need food for survival. So because you need it for survival, calling it an addiction can be actually quite emotionally and psychologically destructive. So yes, it's a habit. You can say it's habit forming. Absolutely it is. But the word addiction can make you feel like you're out of control, or you don't have control over it. And also the word addiction, if you're calling yourself a food addict, if you're saying you've got an addiction, then food becomes this drug that you must somehow avoid. And you need to eliminate that from your life. And it's impossible to solve that conundrum, isn't it? Because you got to eat, right? So if we've kind of caught up in this food as being an addiction, then we get caught up in the whole, it's going to be forever a constant battle against food, because food's the enemy. Oh, but we need food, but food's the enemy, but we need food, Where can you go with that? You can't go anywhere good with that, right? It's not, the outcome's not going to be great. So even though I understand that, yes, food can be very habit forming, especially things like sugar, that sort of thing, I no longer call them addiction. I call them habituation. And that's not to give the food companies a break. I always tell off the food companies, but it simply is that if we use the word addiction in relation to food, we're going to create food as the enemy. If we create food as the enemy, that sets us up for a whole bunch of, eating disorders and challenges and things that aren't going to be helpful, right? So it's just really, calling yourself a food addict turns you into it's like a name, it's a noun, it's a thing, and essentially addiction is a behavior. It's what you do. And so anyway, the whole food addiction thing, it's quite dehumanizing, and it's quite makes you, I think it puts you into more of a victim position where there's nothing you can do about it, and it just puts you into this constant battle against food, sets you up for a constant battle against food. And I think that battling against food for the rest of your life is not helpful. So I would encourage you to reframe any language around food addiction, let it go. And you can replace it with something along the lines of, I'm learning how to nourish myself with food. I'm learning how to have a happy and satisfying relationship with food, which is very different to calling yourself a food addict and making food the enemy, right? So I'm learning how to nourish myself with food. I'm learning how to have a happy and satisfying relationship with food, which is quite different. The other thing is, if you're using that negative language around food addiction and that sort of thing, what happens is, again, it puts your body into this fight or flight mode. And I'll explain that to you, actually. It's probably a good place to explain that. So some of you may have heard of it, some of you may have not, but our body has our nervous system has a couple of main modes that it sort of spends time in. It's complicated and it's more detailed than what I'm about to give you, but that's fine. The detail I'm going to give you right now is enough. But essentially, what you need to do is most of the time your body needs to be in something called rest and digest mode. And in rest and digest mode, your body can recuperate, it can recover, it can detoxify, it can grow new cells, it can heal, you can make digestive enzymes so that you can digest your food, and your liver will go into its phase 2 liver detoxification so it can get toxins out of your system. Essentially, we need to be in rest and digest most of the time, right? That is where our body does all the jobs it needs to do to keep things going and keep things running well, right? What happens is we often go into something called fight or flight. And fight or flight, again, our body is the same historically as the time where we did have famines and time where there was really a tiger running after you or that kind of thing. So in fight or flight, what happens is your body perceives that there is really a lion running after you. So fight or flight is when we're kind of going to that stress mode, right? It's a stress mode. And it could be as simple as you've got lots on and you're really, really busy and you're just suddenly not breathing and you're just, hyperventilating a bit because you're rushing around doing the thing, doing the next thing, doing the next thing. Or it could be that, you're in really bad traffic, or you've just had, some bad news, or you've just had a fight with your partner or something, whatever it is. So it can be like a really mild thing, like it's just, you look at your inbox, or, you look at how many emails you haven't answered, or it can be, something that, anything on the scale that happens that makes you feel somewhat stressed. But what happens is when we go into fight or flight mode, our body literally thinks we're being chased by a lion. And once upon a time that was true, but it's not true now. Now it's just like the red traffic light, or bad traffic on the way to work, or it's some other thing. More often than not, whatever it is not life-threatening. It's lots of emails. It's a overwhelm of life. It's it's the way our modern life is now. It's pretty crazy. So often, what is overwhelming us isn't really life-threatening. However, your body perceives it as life-threatening. And in rest and digest mode, before I was talking about your body's replenishing and it's healing and it's doing all the beautiful things. Well, in fight or flight mode, it's quite the opposite. In fight or flight mode, your body is preparing to run or fight from the lion or the bear, right? So in fight or flight mode, it stops all of your digestion. Because if you're about to become lunch, it doesn't matter if you digest lunch, right? So essentially your body is preparing to run or fight. And what happens is all of the blood flow goes to your heart, and your heart pumps it out to your arms and legs and to your eyes, because you need to be able to see, you need to be able to run, you need to be able to fight. Leaves all of your reproductive areas and digestive areas. So there's nothing going on in your reproduction area and your digestive area, which is an explanation of why people who are under this sort of chronic stress have a lot of reproductive issues, because there's just no circulation going there. If you're about to get eaten by a lion, it does not matter. Reproducing and digesting do not matter when you're about to die. And you might find that your body thinks that it's about to die a lot when it really isn't. It's very easy to get into this mode and realize, oh, wow, I'm not breathing, and I do it all the time, right? Especially when I'm talking and all of a sudden I go, oh, I'm talking about being stressed. Oh, I forgot to breathe. And I just have to remember to breathe, right? So a lot of it's just like day to day, we just don't breathe. We're not, we're doing this, upper breathing, and if you do that, it just sends you into that stress mode. Your body actually thinks, oh, there's not enough oxygen, there's not enough energy, something's going on, something's wrong. So the other thing that can cause you to go, and the other thing when you're in this stress mode is you're releasing glucose into your system so that you can run and fight. And that glucose, if you're not running and fighting, is going to lay down the fat, lay down the inflammation, drive diabetes, heart disease, that kind of thing as well, right? So we don't want to be pumping glucose into our system all of the time. And that's what many of us are doing. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is what can contribute to that is our battle with food. So if you're constantly in this battle against food, and it's this constant battle between yourself and food, you're going to be in this stress mode a lot of the time, if not all of the time. And what happens is that we go into this like battle against food and against our bodies, and that puts you in this stress mode constantly, and then you're going to pile on weight. And then what happens is people say, well, okay, I can't possibly like myself. I love myself how I am now. I'm too fat, right? So my body's too fat right now. I can't love me. I can only like myself or love myself or be okay with myself when. And there's some future time, future thing, you know, when I'm a size 8, when I'm a size 10, when I'm successful, blah, 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 whatever we think it is. But for many people who would be watching this, it would probably relate to a kilos or a size or something like that. So if we're having this constant battle with ourselves, and we've got this shame, and we think that we're failures, and we're having, we think that we're addicted to food, and we're having this constant battle with food, we're always in this stress mode. And if we're always in this stress mode, that's going to cause the inflammation and the weight gain and all those problems, right? So the thinking that we use, it's like, oh, I hate my body, I'm too fat, whatever. The thinking that we use that we think is going to help us doesn't help us. It actually hinders us, because if your thinking is, well, I hate myself, I'm too fat, I'm not good enough, blah, 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 and I'll only be good enough when I don't eat, and when I win this battle with food, and I'm going to starve myself, I'm going to do this, going to do that, going to do this diet, going to do that diet, and of course you fail over and over again, and it just goes back into this. Can you see why that attitude is not going to help you achieve your goals? And so one of the toughest things, but the most important things, is actually to learn how to love yourself now, warts and all, flaws and all. Love all your rolls. I've got my rolls, all the rolls, and bingo wings, whatever. Just love yourself for who you are now. It's fine. And you're worthy of love, whether or not you got bingo wings, or whether you got what are this? Oh, I was just thinking of Kath and Kim. Is it fadubitas and all of the different bits? They have great names for all of the muffin top fadubitas and all that sort of stuff. That's quite funny. But you're fine now. You're worth loving now. And I bet you in your life there are people who you love and who you respect and who you think are worthy of love and respect, who also have muffin tops and fadubitas and all of those other bits, or they're just not perfect, right? Because first of all, there's no such thing as perfect, and even the perfect people aren't perfect. And if you know anything about how Instagram and those sorts of places work, do you see anything that's real on there? No, you really don't. And we somehow think that we need to look at like something that's not real, that doesn't exist. No, it's not going to happen. So really, the only way that you can kind of win with things like emotional eating is to learn to let go of the fight. So we need to change our strategy. We need to let go of the fight. Stop fighting with your body. Stop fighting with food, and start learning how to nurture and nourish yourself. That's really what you need to do. So the gift of emotional eating, the gift you get from emotional eating, is it's shining a light on this issue that maybe it's time to change your strategy. Maybe the constant dieting is not the way to go. And maybe it's time to start to learn how to nurture and nourish yourself rather than torture and punish yourself, which is kind of what a lot of us do, and a lot of us have spent a lot of time doing. You know that over 90% of girls disapprove of their body. And this is in a study of girls from 3 to 6 years old. In a study of girls 3 to 6 years old, nearly 50% were worried about being fat. This is 3 to 6 years old. They're worried about being fat. And 30% of 3 to 6 year olds were already wanting to change something specific about their body. That's just horrifying. And this is a really important part of this message is, where do these children get this from? And not trying to say this in a horrible accusatory way, because we're all human, right? But you have a big impact on the children around you. And it's not, well, a lot of us, we do the do as I say, not as I do thing, but they see who you are. They see who you are. So if you spend your time standing in front of a mirror saying, I'm fat and I'm disgusting and I'm not worthy and I'm unlovable, that's what they see, right? If you hate yourself, that's what they see. So, if you walk around looking at other people, talking about other people, and, we've all done it before. If you don't admit it, you're lying. We've all done it before. And quite often when we're looking at someone and we're going, does she know what her backside looks like in that? It's just because we're feeling bad about what our backside might look like. Truth hurts, but we're human, and most of us have been guilty of that at some time in the past. And we're teaching that to little ones around us. Be aware of how much they're soaking in. And if you're hating yourself, if you think you're hating yourself to health, the kids see that. And the children around you see that, the young people around you see that. What they need to learn is they need to see you accepting and loving yourself to health. Now, accepting and loving yourself, because some people get caught up on this and they say you can't accept yourself if you're really overweight and really sort of obese and whatever. There's two aspects to that. Firstly, there are many sizes you can be and still be healthy. So healthy, you don't have to be a size 8 to be healthy. So there's health at many sizes, yes. So just because you're carrying extra weight doesn't necessarily mean you're unhealthy, depending on where the weight is, depending on different factors, right? But certainly, the bingo wings or the fat around your thighs and your backside, they're not harmful. You might not like how you look in jeans, but they're not going to hurt you. Abdominal weight is a problem. Abdominal weight does relate to sort of diabetes and heart disease and lots of inflammation, lots of health problems. However, even if you do need to lose weight, even if you are obese, hating yourself to get there doesn't achieve anything. So it is perfectly okay and perfectly acceptable, perfectly normal and perfectly healthy to learn to love yourself now. So it's not like, well, I can't be lovable until I just reach this, it's funny. It's one of those catch-22s. It just doesn't work that way. You can't hate yourself to health. And anyone who's tried to do it, I hear this all the time from people. When they got there, they got to their goal weight, right? And then when they got there, they didn't feel like they deserved it. They didn't feel justified. They felt like something was wrong. They put it all back on again. So yes, children are always watching, absolutely. So if you think that hating yourself to health or you can't love yourself now because you need to lose weight for health or whatever is helpful, it's really not, right? Our body recognizes these stress emotions, right? So these are stress emotions. And our body is going to be affected by the stress emotions. So if your emotion is you've got to make sure you have the right calories and exercise is a form of celebrating your body, but we see it as we've got to count every calorie we've had and we've got to this exercise is to burn off all those calories that I had because I'm terrible and because there's something wrong with me. This sort of carry on. What happens is when we're just hating on ourselves all the time and being really, really hard on ourselves all the time, that just creates all the stress hormones, which is going to make us have more weight issues, right? So just be aware that hating yourself to health, like, I know, has any of that worked here for anyone? And has it worked here for you long term? It might have worked for you briefly, but it worked for you long term? It doesn't work. So we need to just sort of learn to love ourselves and then work on nourishing our body. And if you work on nourishing yourself mentally and physically, then sort of weight does begin to sort itself out. But we need to nourish ourselves first. And sometimes we need all the nutrients so that we're not craving sugar, and the nutrients so that we are making digestive enzymes, and the nutrients so that we are making neurotransmitters in our brain. So we need things like protein. You need protein, at every meal so that you are able to make those neurotransmitters that make you feel balanced and happy and all of those things. So you just got to get the right nutrition in. Nutrition is a really important part of it, but it's a healing part of it, not something to fight over. I'm just aware of the time, and it is sort of, I'll just see how much I've got left here because I don't want to go on too much because people get a bit tired of long talks. Look, the story that you tell yourself is very important. And as I was talking before about the narrative, about the different language you can use around things, you can say, oh, I'm a food addict, which is very disempowering, or you can say, I'm learning to nourish myself to health, which is empowering, right? So just think of the language you use, because the language you use is very powerful, and you believe yourself. Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right, and that's absolutely true. So if you sort of tell yourself that, you can't do it and you're no good and you're an addict and blah, blah, blah. Well, that becomes true for you. You're making stress hormones all the time. It's going to be very hard for you to have a healthy weight and be healthy, but if you tell yourself, you're learning to nurture yourself, even though you're flawed, even though you made a mistake, even though you binged last night, even though whatever, I don't care, whatever you did, you're worthy of love and support and forgiveness and beautiful things. So we need to learn how to kind of just get over that. Because the other thing too is, I was talking before about the shame spiral, like where you eat the thing and then you feel bad that you ate the thing, so you have shame, and the way that you deal with shame is you eat the thing, right? If we do that, it just is never ending. So if you binge something, or if you just, went out to do the shopping and ate a block of chocolate on the way home, there's two ways you can deal with that. You can shame yourself about it, which is going to cause you to want to have more sugar and more chocolate and more imbalance and more stress hormones. Or you can make a different choice at your next meal. So your next meal, you can say, okay, I'm going to make sure I have protein and veggies at my next meal. And I'm going to make sure I have that afternoon walk because walking is good for me. Not because I'm walking off all the calories or I'm punishing myself, but because walking is good for my mood and walking is good for my body, right? So it's only ever about the next choice. Right. So and that's where previously I was kind of hinting at, I was talking about being on or off track, or, I've fallen off the wagon, I've gone off track, whatever. The problem with using language like on or off track is, again, it's like, if I'm on track, I'm being good. If I'm off track, I'm being bad. And somehow if I'm off track, it's really hard to get back on track. Not really, it's just a choice it's your next choice, right? So if we're kind of like, oh, I failed, I've gone off track, oh my God, I'm so flawed, there's something wrong with me, may as well start again on Monday, next time I failed this diet. That's just, first of all, that's just an excuse to give up, and that's an excuse to not look after yourself. So, realize how much you're using the fact that you're not perfect as an excuse. It's just an excuse, because you know what, you're not perfect, you're never going to do it perfectly. So if every time you're making a mistake, it's your excuse to give up, well, then that's convenient, isn't it? So just have a bit of think about that if you're using that as your excuse. But the other thing is that it's only ever about the next choice. So you did the thing, whatever thing you did. You did the thing that you shouldn't have done, or that is not helpful to you, or that you feel bad about, or whatever. You can shame yourself about it. You can spend the next week punishing yourself and shaming yourself over it, or you can move on and make a better choice in your next choice. Just move on, make a different choice, and make another choice, and make another choice. It's just all the little choices add up. So if it's only ever about the next choice, that's completely in your control. You've got another choice to make. Make a different choice next time. And what you'll find is, when you do it this way, is more often than not, you will make the better choices. Because if you're not shaming yourself and punishing yourself every step of the way, then what happens is that you are able to make better choices most of the time. And thanks, Christine. Yeah, you can't hate yourself to health. You really can't hate yourself to health, right? It's only ever about the next choice, and you are in control of the next choice. Right? Choose something different, right? Because I think I'm trying to think now, what's Einstein saying, the definition of insanity, doing something along the lines of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If you want a different result this time, you need to do something different, right? And part of doing something different is changing the narrative, changing the self-talk, and knowing that it's only ever about the next choice. And if you carry on and hang around at this choice for the next week, or for the next month, or for the next 10 years and hate yourself for it, well, that will get you one result. That's a choice, but that will get you one result, and I don't think you really want that result. Or you can just make a different choice at your next choice, right? And then a different one at the next, and all those different choices, they all add up, and all the little things add up to the big things, because we do this all or nothing thing. And on that note about perfectionism, I'm a really big fan of Brené Brown. If you haven't heard of her, she's got some great books. But she's got a definition of perfectionism. And for all your perfectionists out there that use it as an excuse to quit, I'm going to read this definition to explain to you why you do that. So perfectionism is not about striving for excellence or healthy striving. It's a cognitive behavioral process, a way of thinking and feeling that says, if I look perfect, do it perfect, work perfect, and live perfect, I can avoid or minimize shame, blame, and judgment, right? So we somehow think that if I do it all perfectly, I can minimize all of that nasty feelings, all of those feelings of judgment on myself or shame or other people's feelings about me. And the truth is, you can't do it perfect. You're not going to do it perfect. You're human. You're running your race. You're not running anybody else's race. And if you use perfection as an excuse to give up every time, well, that's pretty much your excuse for the rest of your life. You don't have to do anything. You may as well just sit back because you can't do it perfect. So you may as well just stop trying, right? Because that's just your excuse. That's your get out of jail free card forever. Whereas you can kind of say, hey, I'm perfectly imperfect. I'm a flawed human being. Oh, well, there you go. Now, what's the next choice? What's the next choice? What's the next choice? You're flawed, you're human. Newsflash, we are all flawed human beings, right? So that's fine. You just got to keep going. So just be aware, you are not the voice in your head. A lot of us think we are the voice in our head. You can actually argue with that voice and you can change that voice. And if what I'm saying is triggering you or you're really struggling with this, go and get some help. You can get some help with us because we help with this, or you go see your doctor and get a referral to a psychologist or someone. Depends on what sort of help you need, right? But you are not the voice in your head. You can actually change that. It is just a program. And programs can be changed. So you're going to change the channel because that channel is not helping you if that channel is saying lots of negative things to you. A good start is actually just to start to notice what the voice in your head is saying, because you might not have even realized before what it's saying. Because when you start to notice it, and you've got to notice it just with curiosity, not with judgment, but when you start to notice the voice in your head, you start to realize why things are so negative for you. And as you start to notice it over time, you can start to interrupt it and say, that's not really true. And you can make different statements and say different things to yourself and learn different ways, different stories to tell yourself, because they're all just sort of stories we tell ourselves. And you can look at, if you ever read, I don't know if you're into reading, but I really, especially when I was younger, I loved reading autobiographies. And if you read autobiographies of people who've done amazing things, whether it's in business or whether it's in politics or whether it's like Nelson Mandela, whoever it is, one of the things they have in common is their self-talk, their narrative, their language that they use. I think, I can't remember the exact language around it, but Nelson Mandela, that Long Walk to Freedom, his book that I read, it must have been 20 odd years ago, when he got out of prison after 27 years, and his family had died while he was in there, and all sorts of horrible things had happened while he was in there, and he'd gone pretty much almost blind, I think, when he was in prison. He just said, I can't remember the words, but it was something along the lines of, I decided that when the door closed behind me that I wasn't going to carry it with me, because if I carried the hate with me, if I carried the resentment with me, that was going to affect the rest of my life. So he just let it go. That's amazing, 27 years of your life. And he was able to let it go. But essentially, people who are successful in life, whatever successful means, but their version of successful, and a lot of it has to do with their narrative, the story they tell themselves, the internal dialogue. And you might have a really dodgy one that was given to you by family or society or wherever it came from. Doesn't mean you can't change it. And sometimes it's simpler to change it than others, and you get help if you're struggling to change it. One thing I wanted to point out to you as well is, I was talking about fight or flight, rest and digest. A great way just to start to learn how to regulate your body and look after yourself is learning how to breathe. And this is a great thing to start doing before meals. For 1 minute, or just any time you can do this, obviously, but for 1 minute before a meal, breathe in for 4 seconds, then slowly release it out for 7 seconds. So it's in for 4 and then out for 7 seconds. If you do that for 1 minute, that will take your body from that fight or flight mode, busy, stress mode, into rest and digest mode, where you're more likely to be able to use your calories, absorb your nutrients, and make your digestive enzymes, and not end up with a whole bunch of reflux and discomfort and stuff after the meal. So learn how to breathe, because that's going to just change that stress response in your body, and it start to help you even make some of these changes. The other thing that I would recommend you do is create an emotional toolbox for yourself, a toolbox that you can use for emotional eating. And these are the sorts of things we go in detail with our clients. I've only got a few more minutes left, so I can't go into a lot of detail. But essentially, when you're emotional eating, when you do that, why are you doing it? And it's a good idea to start to kind of just observe that. Why am I reaching for this thing? Because what you're doing is most likely trying to stop a feeling, change a feeling, numb a feeling. So I would encourage you to notice what the feeling is. It might feel scary, but the feeling's not going to hurt you. It might be a hurting feeling, but you'll survive from it. Like, it might be sad, or it might feel like hurt, but you'll be okay. Again, if you're struggling with this, get help if you feel like it is beyond you. But essentially, a feeling, again, is just a message, and we can't move, feelings can't move through us and move on until we actually have them. So if all we do is use cake to push the feeling down, ultimately the feeling is going to catch up with us sooner or later. So it's a good idea to try and have it sooner rather than build up a lifetime of them and have them later. But I would encourage you to learn, even if you just, you might even set your watch or put a song on or something on your iPhone or your thingy, and kind of go, all right, I'm just going to sit with this feeling for a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. And then after that, if I still really want to have a cake, I can have a cake, but I'm just going to try and have the feeling first. It's a good idea just to learn to have the feeling, because sometimes the feeling isn't so bad and you'll be okay, and it gets you practice in learning how to be uncomfortable, because we don't have practice in learning how to be uncomfortable. And being uncomfortable is okay. It's fine. It's actually where most growth and good things come out of it. But we just have to learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, which sounds a bit weird, but it's actually true, and it's kind of part of healing in life is learning how to be comfortable in the discomfort, because the discomfort's okay. It usually means some change and growth and some good things are happening. So being prepared to let yourself be uncomfortable sometimes is not necessarily a bad thing. And the other thing is too, if you identify what the feeling is, then you might come up with some other strategies that you could put in your toolbox that you could use to help you with that feeling. So I'll give you some examples of what I do, but this might be different things for you. But for me, sometimes I dance. I can put on the music, put on my ABBA, do some daggy dancing, right? But that makes me happy. Or I will shake it off, like literally Taylor Swift, shake it off. Like, think of the duck, think of the dog. You know how they shake themselves? I shake it off. So it's like anything that's not mine, it can go. So I shake it off, or you have a laugh, you have a good belly laugh, or you might chat to a friend, you might play with your dog or your cat or something, and so sometimes it's getting on the floor with an animal, like just getting on the floor with an animal. They are so present, and we need to learn how to be present, and they know how to be present. So be present. Children do as well. Children and small children and animals, they know how to be present. So they teach you a lot about presence, and presence is good because presence is allowing us just to be here right now and to be present with what we need. And the more we can learn how to do that, the more we can look after our needs, and the less we need to just totally numb ourselves with chocolate or whatever it is for you. Also, look, it might be go for massages, having baths, it might be doing some sort of art or some sort of craft for you, whatever it is for you. It might be going for a walk, going outside, listening to some sort of meditation on a meditation app or the Calm app or something like that. There's not a wrong or right to it, but it's, as long as it's legal and healthy. But the idea is essentially to have other things that we know help us with those feelings, so that if we're having the feeling, that it doesn't always have to be the chocolate. And then what happens is, if it doesn't always have to be the chocolate, then we use other strategies. And if we're using other strategies like 8 times out of 10, and then only a couple of times we're actually using the chocolate, then it's less of a problem, isn't it? That emotional eating becomes less of a problem when we, essentially, it becomes less of a problem when we're using other strategies as well. So to learn how to use other strategies, we need to check in, like, what is this feeling? What is going on? What am I feeling? And so it's really important to just understand what you're feeling, to be comfortable with the discomfort, because the discomfort is okay, and often the healing is in the discomfort. And it's also to look at other strategies. What are the other things that help you feel happy or calm or whatever it is? And if you use those some of the time, if they're in your toolbox and you're using them some of the time, you're not doing emotional eating as often. So essentially, my message is to learn how to nourish yourself to health. You are worthy of love, and there's nothing wrong with you. You're not terribly flawed. You don't have a lack of self-discipline and control. If that's going on, it means there's other things going on. There's physical things going on, biological things going on, and there needs to be a reset in the way that you approach this and the way that you talk about this to yourself and the way that you talk to yourself. If you need help with this, we have a program called Your Ultimate Wellbeing Program, and this is exactly what it's for. Your Ultimate Wellbeing Program is a program, it's a 12-week program that we do where we work with you on, there is definitely nutritional strategies there for those who need it, but ultimately it's the stuff that gets in the way of healing. But we'll look at things like, blood sugar levels and nutrient deficiencies and gut health and neurotransmitters and what's going on in your body and why you're struggling. But we'll also look at some of these things as well, the feelings behind it and what's going on. So if you need help with that, what I'll do is I will put a link in below. For Your Ultimate Wellbeing Program, you can book in for just a 20-minute free chat with us to find out more about it and see if it's suitable for you. So there's you're welcome to do that and chat to Beck or I about it. So Rebecca is the other nutritionist who works with me. We work together. Like I said, we work online. And this is exactly what we do with our clients. My role, the way I see it, is to ultimately give the power back to my clients. So the weight loss industry makes a hell of a lot of money out of you feeling out of control and you feeling shame. And so it's, they really want you to constantly feel that shame so that they can constantly sell the next product, the next product, the next product. And, and yes, I am selling something today too, as in, yes, I'm a nutritionist and, people pay for consultations. Absolutely, not pretending that I'm not selling anything. However, first of all, this is free, so you don't have to buy anything from me. But secondly, my goal with my clients is ultimately to teach them to not need me. It's to teach them to listen to their instincts, their natural instinct, and to reconnect with their body and to nurture themselves to health. So that's our goal here. Our goal here at Informed Health is, yes, we're a business. We like to have clients, but yes, we actually like our clients to not need us when they don't need us anymore. They're doing well, or they don't need us as often. They're doing well. That's a good thing. That's what we try and achieve with people, rather than just shaming them so that they'll keep coming back. So we get repeat business, right? So anyway, I'm going to put some links in below so that you can find out more about that if you're interested. I can't see any questions here, but you're welcome to put questions in here and I'll answer them the best I can. Also, I'm going to put a link. We have got a group called the Wellness Connection, and I'm going to put a link to that group under here because I talk about these things in that group. And at the moment, I've been doing kind of regular or semi-regular talks about stress and anxiety and strategies. So you might find that's a really useful place to be. So I'm going to put a link for that in here. We also have an ebook about emotional eating, and I'm going to put a link. So I'll put all the links in for you so that you can get that. It's a free ebook with strategies for emotional eating. So anyway, again, celebrating Natural Medicine Week. I hope everyone's enjoyed this week, and there's been different things that have been available to you. And this is our Informed Health. This is our contribution to Natural Medicine Week, and let's all just learn how to nurture and nourish ourselves, and reject all of this kind of supposed strategies for hating on ourselves. It doesn't help anybody. It's not useful, not helpful. We need a new story, and the new story is that we're worthy of love. We're worthy of health. We're worthy of good health, and we need to learn how to nourish ourselves. So I hope that you've learned something here, and this has been helpful. I hope you have a lovely weekend, and like those links I talked about, I will pop them below. Oh, no problem, Michelle. Thank you as well. Thank you for being here. And I can't see everyone who's here, but thank you so much for being here. And yeah, please, any feedback, any questions, anything like that, just let us know. And I'll just pop all the links in now so that you've got all the links to the things I talked about. Okay, have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye.